Genesis chapter 1. You can remain standing. I'll not make you read a long passage standing up tonight. So Genesis chapter 1, as we continue our series in the book of Genesis called Beginning with God. And so Genesis chapter 1 is what we'll be getting to. We're going to begin our reading in verse 26. We'll read through the end of the chapter as we look to Genesis chapter 1 and verse number 26. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth." And God said, "Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat." And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. The title of our message tonight is Finding and Fulfilling Your Purpose in Life. May God bless the reading of his word. You may be seated. This past week, I guess we had the unofficial holidays of National Daughters Day and National Sons Day. I didn't even know it was a thing until I just started seeing, I think somebody made it up on Facebook. We were talking about this morning, social media. So everybody gets the vast majority of their information. So somebody said, and it was probably some teenager, some 12-year-old or 13-year-old that said, "You know what? They have a Father's Day and they have a Mother's Day. They ought to have a National Sons Day." And so he posted it on there and it spread like wildfire. And now for the last couple of years, we've had a National Sons Day and a National Daughters Day. I really don't know how that started, but people were posting pictures this week about their precious kids and all that, expressing their gratitude for the children that God has given them. And Hannah took part in this, posted something for our daughter Jenna and for our son Josiah, particularly about his passion and love for vacuums. And so she posted that, just something special, unique about him. Why do we do stuff like that? Why do we brag on our kids and boast on them and post pictures of them? Well, it's because we truly love them. That's why we do that. You might on occasion hear someone say that their child is the apple of their eye. You might hear somebody say that. Well, in the original creation of this idiom, the apple of the eye is what is now referred to as the pupil, is what we call it. The center, innermost portion of the eye. And so when someone says that their child is the apple of their eye, they're saying, "You're the center of my eye. You are the object of my affection. You are the center of my world." And they're just expressing their deep love and that they are their cherished possession. They love their kids. The apple of my eye. Well, in Scripture, twice, God called people the apple of his eye. The first time was when God goes and finds Jacob in the desert wandering about, and he calls him that he's going to keep him as the apple of his eye. And then the other time that you find it is in Zechariah's prophecy, that after basically what happened is Israel had been taken away captive and because of their sin. And so God was judging them because of their waywardness and their idolatry. And so he was judging them for that, and they were carried away into Babylonian captivity, and Israel was carried away into Assyrian captivity. And what happened, though, is that God was using those other nations as the instrument of judgment, but the problem was they took pleasure in abusing the people of Israel. And what God said, I'm getting a little bit of ringing if you could turn me down a little bit. But what God said was this, He said, I want you to know that the nations that touch you, my people, the people of Israel, the nations that touch you touch the apple of my eye. What's God saying there? You ever seen your brother in a fight? You can fight with your brother all you want, but if somebody else starts fighting with your brother, you're going to come over and be like, that's my brother, only I get to hit him. That's what we're talking about there. That's what God is saying. He's saying, Israel is the apple of my eye. Don't mess with my people. That's what God was saying. Well, K.A. Matthews said this, that the crown of God's handiwork is human life. The crown of God's handiwork is human life. Listen, there is no mistaking that God set man apart from the rest of creation. We read it. It's very unique, the position that man has. In every act of creation, God simply spoke, but when it came to creating man, he had a conversation with himself. There was a conversation that took place in heaven about what man would be like and what his purpose would be in the creation. While God spoke everything else into existence, we'll find in chapter 2 that God formed man of the dust of the ground. And he breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. That God just spoke the stars into space and the sun and the moon and spoke and brought the animals forth. But when it came to man, God knelt down in the dust and he formed man out of the dust of the ground, and he breathed his own breath into man to make him a living soul. God's got his hand of touch upon the life of man. And so he separated him, made him transcendent above the rest of the creation. What that tells you tonight is that if you're in here and you're a living and breathing soul, just as Adam was, that God created you with tender love and compassion, and he made you the crown of creation. Now, why would he do that? What's the purpose that God created man for? We live in a day where people are in a desperate search for meaning, for fulfillment. They're asking this question, why am I here? Where am I going? And what am I supposed to do? And how did I get here in the first place? People are asking all that. Well, I'm going to tell you this. Genesis 1, 2, and 3 answers a ton of those questions. But we're just living in a day where people are in a desperate search for meaning, and they're looking for it anywhere and everywhere apart from God. But I would say that the best place to find out why you're here is to go to the one who put you here in the first place, and that is God. God created man with a differentiating mark from the rest of creation. Man's creation began with a dialogue between the Godhead. It says there in verse 26, and God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. We've already seen how all three parts of the Godhead were involved and active in creation. That obviously you have God the Father who is speaking everything into existence. And then you have the Holy Spirit of God that's moving upon the face of the waters. And then you have the Lord Jesus Christ, who's the one who holds everything in place, is what the New Testament tells us. And so unlike there are some out there, let me put it this way, there are some out there who suggest that this is a conversation between God and the other gods. No, that's not what it's talking about. There are some that say this is a conversation between God and the angels. The only problem with that is the angels are not made in the likeness of God, and so how can man be made in the likeness of them? It's not God speaking to angels. It's not him speaking to other gods. No, this is God deliberating with the Son and the Holy Spirit about who man would be and what his purpose would be upon the earth. And their purpose or their plan was to make man in his own image, after his own likeness. The word translated make, it's a word that means to produce or to manufacture something with effect and purpose, something to put to use. In other words, it's not like God formed a pot to sit on the shelf. No, he formed man to go out and do something, is what it says. Well, what was that purpose? It says to be in God's image and likeness. Well, what does that mean? The word image has the idea of being an engraved inscription. It's like a replica, a model, or a representation. And image and likeness are often used interchangeably in the Bible, but likeness means to be shaped, to be fashioned, or to be in the similitude or the resemblance of another. That's what the word image and likeness means. Now, college athletes are now allowed to be paid for the use of their name, their image, and their likeness. This is new this year. This means that anything that bears their name, anything that bears their image, anything that bears their likeness, they have a right to collect money for, and that includes the video games. Now, it's amazing how far the video game industry has come. When I grew up, we played things like Tecmo Bowl on the Nintendo, and we played NCAA Game Breaker 1998. That was before any of you were born. And so we played that, or we played NFL Blitz on the Nintendo 64 and the arcade. And I'll tell you this, as you're playing those football games, there's not a prayer of making out who is who. You're lucky if you can see the eyes and the face and the muscles. That's pretty much all that you can see, especially in NFL Blitz. But you don't have a chance of being able to tell who these players are apart from the name on the back of the jersey. Well, man, if you look at game systems today and you pull up the PS5 or Xbox 360 or whatever else is new out there, you pull these things up and you start playing the NFL Madden games and you start playing the college football games, it looks like the real thing. It's crazy. I mean, we've played some boxing games before, and Conor McGregor looks just like Conor McGregor. It's incredible. And so it's amazing what they've been able to do. What does a video game do? Well, it takes those players, those athletes, it takes their image, their likeness, and it projects it up on the screen for the game players to be able to see. That's the idea here of the fact that man is to bear the image and the likeness of God. He says, let us make man in our image and after our likeness. So that what that tells us is this: God created every one of us to project his image and likeness. Let there be light. See, I don't have the power of God. There it goes. Mercy. Lord, help us, please. Need to break that thing or something. Anyhow, so God created us to project his likeness. Now, here's the question. Where are we to project his likeness? Upon the creation. That's what he tells us. Now, being made in the image of God carries a load of meaning. Number one, it means you were created to be an eternal being in the likeness and image of God. Now, the only difference between God's eternality and man's eternality is that we had a beginning. God didn't have a beginning, but like God, we were also created to have no ending. It was to be eternal fellowship in the presence of God. That's why we were created. And so being made in God's image and likeness means that we're eternal beings. It also means that we are created in original righteousness. That as man was originally created, there was no sin nature. There was no sin in him at all. He was in the perfect, pristine image and likeness of God in his original created state. But there's another meaning that it means to be bearing the image of God. In chapter 5 and verse 3, we'll see that it mentions that Adam had a son named Seth, and that he had this son in his own image after his own likeness. And so the idea of being bearing the image of God and being created in the likeness of God carries a father-sonship relationship as well. That we are made in the likeness of God means that we are directly connected to him. It's an amazing thing to consider. In Luke's genealogical account that we looked at on Sunday mornings back in the early parts of planting the church, it said that Luke said that Adam was the son of God. And so you see it there that he was directly connected to God. What that means for you tonight is that God is not an impersonal God that created you and then is just completely uninvolved in your life. No, you're directly connected to him, and he wants you to know that you're connected to him. That's why we have this passage here tonight. Unlike the rest of creation, man was created in the image and likeness of God. But I want you to also see that man was given a responsibility to manage everything that God had created. He says, let us make man in our image and after our likeness. And then he says this, let him have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over cattle and over all the earth and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. And so man was given this dominion, this ability to rule, to reign, and to exercise authority upon the creation. God made a clear distinction between man and the rest of creation by the mere fact that we were made in the image of God. What this tells us is that man's responsibility over creation is really to be viewed more as a stewardship than an ownership. Now, I realize where we are. We're in Boulder, Colorado. This is AKA Greenville. A lot of environmental things going on around here. And for a long time in Christianity, environmentalism has just been bashed and yelled at and mocked and ridiculed and scorned. But the reality is that God told Adam that he was to steward, not own and destroy the creation. He was to manage it for God. In fact, in chapter 2, we're going to see that God told him to dress it and to keep it. That word dress literally means to serve. That man was created to serve the land. And so while I'm not a tree hugger, I will just say that it's not wrong to care for the creation. It's not wrong to pick up trash off the street. It's not wrong to trim some trees and make sure that they're looking nice and neat. No, God wanted us to do that. And I'm not saying that it's wrong to have a pet. It's not wrong to love animals. That's okay. God wanted us to do that. And so, but what I do want to say is this: where we go wrong is when we care more for the environment than we care about the God who created the environment. That's where things go wrong. And so the reality is we do have a lot of people around us here. They love their garden. They love their flowers. They love their pets, their animals. I mean, I see more signs as we're going door to door about saving their cats in case of a fire than just about anything else. And so people here, they love their animals. They love the mountains and all the trails and everything that has to offer. But where too many people go wrong is that while they enjoy the creation, they never stop to enjoy the Creator. They value the creation above the Creator, and that's not how it's supposed to be. Things are out of order when we value environmental life over human life as well. When we value dogs over people. When we value unborn dogs over unborn people, things are out of order. Why? Because God set man apart. God sanctified him. God made him above the rest of the creation, including the fish, and including the animals and the cows and all those other things. What this should have done is it puts an end, first of all, to pantheism, the belief that God is in the creation. You know, you'll hear that here. There are people that say, you know what, why do I need to go to church? I can go up and I can worship God in the mountains. God is in the mountain. God is in the trees. God is in my backyard. God is in my little statue that I have on my front porch. No, what this is saying is that those are all things that were designed to be ruled by you, not the other way around. The cows, I mean, we could go over to Asia and Indonesia where they worship cows. No, God didn't intend for the cows to rule over us. He intended for us to rule over the cows and the dogs and the horses. It's perfectly okay to put reins on horses. God designed it to be that way. In fact, he says to subdue the earth. That means to conquer. Those mountains are there to conquer. It's okay to go hiking. That's perfectly fine. But where we go wrong is when we value the creation over God. And so this destroys pantheism completely. But what this should have communicated to the Israelites is that all those idols they worshipped had no place ruling over their lives. Only God was to rule over their lives, and they were to rule over everything that was created and made. And so God's purpose for man was deliberated and fleshed out between the Godhead before man was ever created. Because notice the next verse. So God created. So what this tells us, there was a conversation in heaven that took place about you and what your purpose would be, and about who you would be, and about why you would be here, and about what you're supposed to do and where you're supposed to go. That was all deliberated out in your life before you were ever created. And I would say it today, before you were ever born. See, that just tells us that God has a purpose for your life. God created man in his image and in his likeness, and this passage answers two of the fundamental questions of life. And the first is, where did I come from? Well, I can tell you with confidence, you came from God. You were created by him to be an eternal being. You were created by him in original righteousness to be a pure, holy person, and you were created by Him to be a son of God. It's amazing. Can I say this? If you're a male, God created you a male. And if you're a female, God created you a female. I know that's not very popular today, but look at verse 27. So God created man in His own image. In the image of God created He him, male and female created He them. What that means is this. If you're in here and you're a man tonight, God made you a man for a purpose. And if you're in here tonight and you're a woman, God created you a woman for a specific purpose. And so why did God create me to be the person that I am? Why did He make me a man? Why did He make you a woman? Why did He do that? And why did He make us in the first place? Well, the second question that this passage answers is, why am I here? So not only how did I get here, but why am I here? Well, God didn't tell us exactly how He created everything. Notice that. He didn't tell us how He made those animals come up out of the ground, or the fish to pop out of the sea like a black hole. It doesn't say how He did that, but you know what He did tell us? Why it's all here. That means that God wants you to know your purpose for living, the purpose for which He created you. Well, you might ask, well, why male and female? Why not just male? Or the ladies might be saying, why not just females? Why did God create both of us? Well, listen, God created you just the way you are. And one of the major purposes behind you being who you are was to replenish the earth. I mean, look at verse 28. It says, and God blessed them, the male and the female. And God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. And so God created a man and God created a woman to have little kids so they could fill the earth with people. Okay? Well, hold on a second then. Now, if you're going to be a man and a man, how does that fulfill God's purpose of replenishing the earth? It doesn't. Or if it's a female and a female, how does that fulfill God's purpose? I'm sorry, but it just doesn't. It doesn't. And so when you lose sight of biblical marriage, you lose sight of the biblical purpose of marriage. It loses its fundamental purpose. To believe in a blurred system of genders is to fundamentally reject God's purpose for your life. It's to look God in the face and say, I'm not who you made me to be. Well, there are some that would say, well, then God made a mistake. Why, if He created me a man, then why do I feel like a woman? If He created me a woman, then why do I feel like a man? No, here's the problem is you have a misunderstanding of who God is. And you have a misunderstanding of His purpose for your life. I don't mean to be unkind, but I'm just saying that to change your sexual identity is the same as accusing God of making a mistake. And God does not make mistakes. God is perfect. Well, why do I feel this way then? Why do I have this battle inside of me where sometimes I like people of the same sex or where sometimes I feel like I'm the opposite gender? Sin. That's not the way God originally created it to be. He didn't want you to face those battles and those struggles. But the reality is, as we get into chapter 3, we're going to see that man rejected His word from the beginning in Adam and Eve. And that sent this world into a crazy downward spiral far away from what God intended it to be in original righteousness. That's why you battle with those feelings. It's not God's fault. It's man's fault. It's sin. That is why. But let me please be clear that just because a person changes their sexual identity or experiences same-sex attraction does not mean that God hates them or that they are beyond salvation. It doesn't mean that. In fact, Jesus' death on the cross demonstrates God's infinite love for them and value of their soul, because in spite of the fundamental rejection of who God made them to be, He still came. And He still died on the cross to redeem them from their sin and to restore the image they were originally created to bear. And so it shows God's love for them. The very fact that He still came and died for them, regardless of whether or not they accept who they are in Him. And so here's what I'm getting to. We got to be careful that we don't classify these lifestyles as somehow more sinful than any other. Because the reality is that these lifestyles are no more a reflection of the way that sin mars the image of God than somebody who is hooked on porn, than somebody who's engaged in fornication, than somebody who's engaged in an adulterous relationship. Those all mar the image of God, every one of them. And so it means that if you're struggling at home with sexual sin, it means that you're no different than somebody out there who changed their sexual identity, or somebody who likes a different gender, or the same gender, I mean. It doesn't mean that you're any different than them. See, the reality is because of sin, we are all sexually broken people. And the truth is it just shows up in different people in different ways. And so we've got to be careful that we don't look at our society, especially the one around us, where this is very prevalent, where people, I've had conversations with people in our city that have battled with this, and they've wondered, am I who I'm supposed to be? Or am I supposed to be this? Or am I supposed to like this person? Am I supposed to like this person? And it's a battle. It's an immense struggle. And it's real. I'm not going to say it's fake. I'm going to say it's real, but I want to say that it is the consequence of sin, not of God making a mistake. And so we've got to look at it from the perspective, not that we write people off, not that we say you're not welcome here. No, they are welcome here, because you know what they need to hear? The message of how Jesus came so that he could restore the image of God and take it back to the Garden of Eden days. That's what they need to hear. That there is hope from this inward struggle that they've battled with for so long. And that even after coming out and assuming that because of the way it's accepted in society that they're going to be just fine and they'll feel better. No, they still grapple with this inwardly of whether or not it's really true. And what they need is a church that's going to love them and that's going to go to them and that's going to tell them the truth. Not just tell them, don't worry, everything will be okay. But to tell them there's hope. There's a way out of this, and you can find it in Jesus Christ. See, sin has marred the image of God in every one of us. And what I'm just trying to say is this, that God created you the way you are for a distinct purpose. And you don't have to fundamentally change who you are in search of a purpose that you already have. You just need to go to the right one who can redefine that purpose for you. God created male and female, and he gave them his blessing to multiply and to fill the earth and to exercise his dominion and authority over all that God had created. And then look at how good God is in verse 29. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. And then in verse 30, he says the same thing for the animals. He's saying, you want to know why I created these trees? You want to know why I created these plants, these things that bear fruit? You know why I created lettuce? You know why I created, it wasn't carnivorous. That's, I don't want to sound blasphemous, but that's the only good thing about sin is we can eat steak right now. There will come a day when we're not eating steak anymore. Why? Because that wasn't how God created it to be. He created the creation to function together. He created man to eat the fruit and the plants. And he created the same things for the animals as well. What I'm trying to get at here is God was so good that he fashioned and he prepared the greenery and the mountains and the trees. And he prepared all of these things to be able to sustain man's life so that he could go on. God was thinking of man before he even started creation. And it says in verse 31, and God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. That word very good means to be powerfully good to the highest degree. In other words, you can't be any more good than you already are. That's what this is saying. The creation that God made was better than it ever could be. We truly, as beautiful as it is, and as I was, this sounds so corny, but as I was driving down Highway 119 coming to church tonight, I looked at the mountains and I was listening to a song, Creation Sings the Father's Song. And I'm looking at these mountains and I just had tears start coming down my eyes. And it was just like, this is beautiful. And of course, this message was on my heart, but just to think, God created it all for us to enjoy. How good is God? Listen, that's the purpose of the creation. It was to proclaim the glory and the goodness of God. That's what all the creation was for. And let me tell you this, that's what you are for. What is your God-ordained purpose on this life? Well, it's to project God's glory and goodness upon the creation. It's so that everything looks at each other and just says, wow, God is good. That's how it was supposed to be. That was why God created it. Now, when you consider the implication of this text to its original readers, God had chosen Abraham and his descendants, and out of them He created the nation of Israel. And once He created the nation of Israel, He had promised to give them the land of Canaan. Do you see some parallel here? God created man and gave him the earth. God created Israel and He gave him the land of Canaan. Why did He give him the land of Canaan? It was to project God's glory and goodness to all the nations. See, God told Abraham, in thee shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. And then Moses told the people in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 5 through 7, listen to this. Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord my God commanded me, that ye should do so in the land whither ye go to possess it. Keep therefore and do them. Listen, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what nation is there so great who hath God so nigh unto them? Do you see it? Why did God want Israel to have this creation account? He wanted to show this. I created man for a purpose. And I gave him the land. And that purpose was that the creation and that man would in harmony together project the goodness and the glory of God. And so I created you as a nation, the nation of Israel. And I gave you the land of Canaan so that you would project my goodness and glory upon all the nations of the earth. But oh, how Israel fell short. Well, what's your purpose today? Is the same as Adam's? The same as Israel's? Why am I here? How did I get here? God created you. God created you on purpose. Okay, now why am I here? To project God's glory and goodness to all the creation, including fellow man. That's why He created you. We've got these projectors up here. How does a projector work? Well, there's an HDMI cable going to each of these projectors, and there's a computer back there that's being operated by a human being, and it's got an image that was designed by another human being. And so the goal is to send it from the computer through the wires to the projector, and then the projector blows it up and magnifies it so that all of you can see it. Can I tell you, it's a lot easier to sing off this than if I had the two laptops up here. You're trying to read those? See, listen, we're to function as projectors. That what we do is we are made in the image and the likeness of God. We are made in the glory and the goodness of God. And we are to make it bigger. We're to magnify it. And we're to put it up on display so that all the rest of the world can see the glory and the goodness of God. That's why you were created on this earth. Your life's purpose is to function in that way. But if we're honest with ourselves, we fall far short, just like Adam and Eve did, and just like the nation of Israel did, of really projecting the goodness and the glory of God to this earth. We fall short. Why? Because of sin. The reality is, in our sinful condition, we are incapable of fulfilling our purpose of projecting the glory and the goodness of God. But you know what? Jesus Christ came. And the reason why Jesus came and the reason why He died on the cross was to deal with our sin. Why? Because sin is what has broken the lens of the projector. It's put cracks in it. And now as we go about and as we go to our workplace and as we go amongst our friends and amongst our family, a lot of times what we end up finding ourselves doing is we're putting on display a cracked and marred image of who God is. Because we don't think the way that we're supposed to. And you might not listen to music that honors and glorifies God. And you might not spend your money on things that honor and glorify God. And you might not look at things on a computer that honor and glorify God. And you might go to work and you don't talk in a way that honors and glorifies God. And so as we go out into this world, the problem is that a lot of Christians who have been redeemed by the blood of Jesus Christ to project the glory and goodness of God back upon the creation, we're walking around with a broken display. We're walking around with a marred image of the glory and the goodness of God. And that's why so many people out there in the world can look at the church and say, can you believe those Christians did that? Can you believe that sin they committed? Can you believe the immorality that goes to the church and the pastors hooking up with the secretary and with kids in the church? And you've got all this going on. And then on top of that, you've got affairs between church members and you've got abusive fathers and you've got abusive mothers and you've got marriages that are falling apart and being divorced. Oh, how we fall short, even as redeemed and restored believers in Jesus Christ. But can I tell you this, that the reason that Jesus came was to fix the lens, to repair what's been broken, to get us back in a place where we are projecting the glory and goodness of God upon everybody else. Jesus came as the visible manifestation of God to bleed and to die on the cross in order to remove the sin so that man could be conformed and restored back into the image of God and fulfill the purpose for which he was created. You know Romans 8:29, for whom he did foreknow, he did also predestinate to be conformed to the image of his Son. Those who were saved, God predetermined way beforehand that he would save them for the purpose, and he predestined, he predetermined that those who trust in Jesus Christ would be conformed into the image of Jesus Christ. Well, according to Colossians 1:15, it says that Jesus is the image of the invisible God. So to be in the image of Christ means to be in the image of God. So the reason Jesus came was to restore the image, to put it back in the place that it ought to be, to get us back to fulfilling our purpose. And so the only way for you to be able to find and fulfill your purpose in life is through the Lord Jesus Christ. And so as we consider a world today that's seeking fulfillment and meaning in life, anything this world has to suggest apart from God will be a futile and an endless search. But when you take God at His word, and you accept Him for who He is as your creator, and you see that He did create you not by accident, but on purpose, and that purpose is to project His glory and His goodness, and you look to Jesus Christ, He can fix the image. He can restore the likeness. But the reason why so many struggle to find that purpose and fulfillment is because of sin. It's because of sin. But I want to tell you this, believers, that God has the same purpose for your life. That is to project His glory and His goodness to all those around us. But in and of yourself, you're incapable of doing that, because sin is still present with you at this time. But Jesus has done what it took to remove our sin, both past, present, and future, so that you no longer have to live as a slave to sin. But now you can be made in the righteousness of God, and you can accurately project His glory and goodness upon the creation. You know what this means? It means that everywhere you go, people ought to be able to look at your life and say, man, God is good. God is glorious. God is great. They ought to say, I need to know the God that person knows, because they live different than everybody else I know. And this is true of our kids, that I've got to be careful as a dad that I make sure that I'm projecting the glory and the goodness of God upon my kids, that I'm not just angry all the time, that I'm not just fighting them all the time, that I'm not just yelling and screaming, and dads have to be careful that they're not abusive, and moms have to be careful that they're not always just screaming and fussing and yelling at their kids. Why? Because what our kids need to see in us is the goodness of God. Now understand this, that God is so good that He chastens His children when they get out of the way. So sorry, Jenna, but that doesn't mean you're never getting any kind of discipline whatsoever. You're not off scot-free. But it does mean this, that I've got to be careful as a dad, And my wife's got to be careful as a mom. And you prospective, maybe one day in the very distant future, moms and dads, you got to remember that God's goal for you is still the same as a parent. It's to project the glory and the goodness of God. And that's true as a spouse as well. That if God ever enables you to get married, you got to remember that as a husband, you're to project the glory and goodness of God to your wife. And the wife is to project the glory and goodness of God to her husband. And kids, you're supposed to project the glory and goodness of God to your parents and to your brothers and sisters and to classmates at school and people that we work with. I mean, everywhere we go, people ought to look at our life and just say, boy, God has been good to them. I wonder if He'd be good to me. See, bearing the image of God is really an insurmountable task for us because of our sin. In fact, far too often, because of our sinful nature, we fall far short of projecting the image that God created us to project. Kent Hughes said this, "Man remains in the image of God, but as a grisly shadow of himself." Can I tell you this? You will mess up. Because sin is still present with us. Until Christ returns and we're delivered from the complete body of this sin, the sin nature, the presence of sin, it's still going to be present with us. There's still going to be times we break the lens. We mar the image. We crack the display. But can I tell you this? When you face those times of life, Jesus Christ is still there faithful to forgive and to restore and to put the image back where it's supposed to be. And He'll do that if you can come to Him and you repent of your sin and you ask Him to forgive you, and He puts it under His blood and He restores the image back and He sets you back in the right place where you can once again project the glory and goodness to the rest of creation. That is your God-ordained purpose. And what that means is you're not an accident. God created you for that purpose, to project His glory and His goodness. As fallen people in a fallen world, we're unable to find and fulfill this purpose apart from the grace and mercy of the Lord Jesus Christ. And so if you're struggling to find meaning and purpose and function in life, you can find it today in Jesus Christ. He died for you, and it doesn't matter how bad your lens is broken. He will forgive you and cleanse you and repair that image once again. And if you've fallen short, and like Adam and Eve, you marred the image, and like Israel, you marred the image, Christ's call to you is, come to me, and I can fix it. I know it's been broken. I know it's been broken for a long time. But it doesn't matter how long it's been broken, because look at the creation. I made all of this out of absolutely nothing. So what keeps me from recreating you once again and restoring you to the image of God? You can find and fulfill your purpose through Jesus Christ and Him alone. Our Father, we come to you tonight and just want to ask you to help us. Because without Christ, we cannot accurately portray who God is to a fallen world. It's all of Him and none of us. And so I pray you'd help us to gaze our eyes upon our Savior. And I pray that you do a work in the folks that attend Boulder Valley Baptist Church and anybody that might be listening right now. I pray, God, that you would help us to rely upon you and to trust in Christ to restore the image. Help us respond accordingly. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.